there, listeners. Are you feeling the weight of the world? Well, you're not alone. The U.S. Surgeon General says nearly 50% of parents are overwhelmed by stress. And guess what? It's affecting us all. Just last year, we heard about an epidemic of loneliness hitting half our population, especially young adults. But there's hope. I'm Scarlett Lewis, founder of the Choose Love movement. We're dedicated to your safety, health, and well-being with proactive mental health strategies. Imagine a life where stress and loneliness are replaced by joy and connection. We've already reached millions with essential life skills to prevent violence, substance abuse, and mental illness. Want to join this life-changing movement? It's easy. Visit chooselovemovement.org today. Become a member, spread the word, and access our free resources. Together, we can create a loving, supportive community. Remember, all the nurturing, healing love you give comes back to you tenfold. Thank you for choosing love.
I choose love. I choose love.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Choose Love podcast. So happy to have you here. Today's guest is someone whose work has brought healing, resilience, and transformation to trauma survivors around the world. I am deeply honored to welcome Dr. Leyden, an internationally respected humanitarian, trauma healing professional, and founder of The Grace Process. Dr. Leyden is known for her groundbreaking work with survivors of genocide, school shootings, and other tragedies, including her incredible work in Rwanda, Newtown, and with global youth leaders. Her signature approach, The Grace Process, blends science, spirituality, and heart-centered healing to help individuals move from trauma to post-traumatic growth, a mission that beautifully aligns with the Choose Love formula of courage, gratitude, forgiveness, and compassion in action. Through her transformational programs and unwavering compassion, Dr. Leyden has helped thousands reclaim their personal power, rediscover hope, and lead lives of purpose. I can't wait to explore her journey with all the listeners, her insights on healing through grace, and how we can all live and lead from love, even in the face of unthinkable pain. Thank you very much, Lori, for joining us.
Thank you, Scarlett. And it's such a delight to be reconnected as we have been these past few weeks. And, after our 3 years together in Newtown.
Yeah, so 3 years together in Newtown. Let's unpack that a little bit, because we have a history together and we've had lots of experiences, including meeting the Dalai Lama. So let's talk about what preceded you coming to Newtown, how you got here, what that process looked like.
Sure. Well, I had a near-death experience in 2003. And at that time, I asked the divine, where do you want me? What am I going to do to maximize this new life? And the message I received was, everything in life is a choice, including taking the next breath, and follow your heart wherever it leads you. Well, I didn't realize that was going to lead me from living in Rhode Island to Santa Barbara, California, to Rwanda, to Newtown, and all of the other places that you mentioned. So here I was in Santa Barbara, building a new life for myself, and I was calling in my spiritual romantic partner. So I really thought that was going to be a man, but it turned out to be a country.
Interesting.
Yes. And I would later have a conversation with Louise Hay about that, but that's for another time. And so
I'm interested in that.
Yeah. So I received an email from someone in Rwanda who had read my first book, The Stress Management Handbook, and they said, can we translate it into Kinyarwanda, which is the language of Rwanda? And I said, yes. And then I said, what else can I do? And they said, please come here and teach your trauma healing skills to our widow and orphan genocide survivors. And I said, yes. And then I said, how am I going to do that? I'm just rebuilding my life. But I knew with every fiber of my being that was speaking to my soul. And so fast forward to going to Rwanda now almost 18 times from 2007 to actually just before COVID was my last trip. But our friend Nick Ortner of the Tapping Solution was supporting and sponsoring some of my work there, which we can talk about. Um, and so he basically, we were making a documentary about my work in Rwanda. I had come up with a plan. Every time I came back from Rwanda, my heart, instead of breaking, my heart broke open to what was possible. And I know you have had the same experience, incredibly so. But every time I came back, I said, well, trauma healing isn't enough if they don't have effective leadership skills and they haven't, and they don't have any economic sustainability. So I created Project Light Rwanda, and we took these 12 beautiful young people who are now my adopted sons and daughters, some of whom you have met. We now have 14 grandbabies.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, one of them they named Lori. Unfortunately for my grandchild, they can't say the L word, so it's Wowie.
Will, they'll be able to.
Yes, exactly. And so, as we were building out this program, we sponsored these young people for university, for entrepreneurial businesses. We taught them trauma healing through tapping, EFT, and we helped them with heart-centered leadership skills. So today they're in their communities. They are helping other people with trauma healing. They have although life is difficult in Rwanda for many reasons, they really have thrived and it's a joy. But my vision was to connect traumatized young people around the world for healing. And I was really working hard to get this Project Light model accepted around the world. And as things happen, things were not really happening with setting up new programs. So I surrendered to that. And I remember in December 2012, it was the 13th of December, and I remember surrendering to the divine, saying, I don't know what's next. This documentary isn't getting done. Things aren't getting off the ground. So I surrender to where would you have me next? And unfortunately, the next day, uh, I received a call from Nick Ortner telling me, as I was watching on the television, what was unfolding in Sandy Hook and what was unfolding for you and all the precious parents and really everyone who was affected. And he said, what would you do if you were here? And I said, I would do the same thing I did in Rwanda, which was to train Newtowners to help other Newtowners. Because after a tragedy like this, as you know, thousands of volunteers come in, very well-meaning, but it overwhelms an already overwhelming system. So in any event, we chatted about this, and he said, how soon can you get here? And I said, how about Tuesday? And 3 days after the tragedy, I was on the ground very quietly talking to people just to get a feel for what is this community like, what is happening here, with no preconceived notion that I knew what should happen here, except that I brought my skills, my experience, and I wanted to partner with the people in Newtown to have a long-term trauma healing program. And I'll bookmark it here because there is kind of a funny story, if you can use the word funny, of how we connected there. But it was very clear to me from the moment I arrived that this was something that was calling to my heart deeply for so many reasons.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the world stopped that day, obviously for me, but I think being a part of such a from a trauma that is really felt around the world, and still to this day, wherever I go in the world,
Yeah.
people say to me, I remember exactly what I was doing when I got the news. And there are very few things that I've heard in life that people say that about. And I know it was because it was just so shocking, and the emotion associated with that memory helps it come up very vividly for people, but lots of trauma. And even those who weren't directly impacted. And I mean, what does that mean? I mean, obviously there were families that lost kids, but there were also all the kids in that school, then all the kids in the school district, all their parents, all the community members. I mean, even if you weren't directly impacted, if you had trauma, and of course I learned trauma is like an onion. You have a trauma, and then in order to be able to move forward, and when you don't process it in the moment, another trauma pain comes and it layers over that, and then it just continues to go until something might break it open. And it can be something that happens in your vicinity but doesn't even directly relate to you. So my point is, this impacted a lot of people. And so at this point, were you going to say something mildly humorous about how we met? Because I think this would be a good time.
Yes. And also to our listeners, and of course your listeners are with you every day, and they know how to balance that deep tragedy with the being able to see the divine in things that can also come with humor, which frankly, nurturing, healing love is not just, it's heartwarming, it's heart opening. This
Well,
might,
Jesse did say have a lot of fun. So
yes, that's correct.
yeah.
Yes. Um, and so this may come as a surprise to some of the people I know in Newtown, but uh, we had a group of 35 volunteers, and I made a list of the people that I felt could really benefit from the clinical EFT version of trauma healing. And you were on the top of that list, along, of course, with the other parents and some key other people in the community. And I received an email from a friend of yours saying, you probably won't read this because you'll get hundreds of emails, whatever, but my friend Scarlett and her son JT have been impacted, and I would love to connect you both. And I remember I'm driving. I don't know where I'm driving in Newtown because I live in California. I don't know. But I was like, yes, where are you? I will be there immediately. And then I called Nick Ortner because part of the email was what a big fan you were of Nick's. And so honestly, it was, I think 2 hours later, we were sitting in your living room and really being present to the impact, which, people just don't understand the impact that comes in waves. It's not just the first week, it's like every week, every month, every anniversary, every sign, every news story. The impact is inconceivable unless you have experienced it. But we were able to connect with you. And at the time, JT was 12 and he was in his room, and you and I and Nick were tapping together. I think your mom might have been there, and the friend that connected us. And apparently JT was listening. But, and I said, well, where is JT? And you had explained that he was not really having any of this tapping stuff. And that also he was very protective of you, and that he had a sixth sense about him that he wanted to protect you from, sounds strange to say, but people who might take advantage of the circumstance. And
And there
so,
were those people. So
yes,
his info
yes.
was correct.
Exactly. And this is the inconceivable piece that people don't understand, as if you are not going through enough trauma and there had been a circumstance in your own life that was quite concerning. But once we were able to do some tapping and regulate your physiology, it was like, your heart, your brain, and your body opened. We didn't heal everything that day. It's a long, long process. But there was an opening of, oh, I can breathe again. And
I remember that first experience, and I was you all were tapping in front of us and we were sitting on the couch, and I was so angry about a certain thing, and it was, I don't know, I was perseverating over this anger at this person. And as we were tapping, I was moving through the anger and getting more to the grief. And basically, I think Nick was suggesting, in a very diplomatic way, do you think that you're using that anger as a shield for your grief? And I remember opening my eyes, because my eyes had been shut, and I looked at him and we both laughed, because yeah, of course I was, but I wouldn't have gotten to that point on my own. That was the tapping process, which I was really, it really helped me a lot to uh be able to access. I mean, now I know, and I didn't know then, my prefrontal cortex, where the highest and best version of myself is. I was in my fear brain. And when you're in your fear brain, you react with anger, revenge, thoughts of revenge, and things like that. And I was definitely there, which is completely understandable. But I didn't want to stay there. And I certainly didn't want to model that for my son. And so tapping early on was very helpful for me.
well, and if I may say, you were so eager for the healing, which is so beautiful. Because look, we come to this in our own time. And the beauty of what I've found in this EFT for trauma is it's very gentle. And it's totally on where you are in the moment. We are not trying to move anybody from this place to that place. So it's very sacred in terms of honoring where the person is. And then another kind of humorous thing happened, which was JT did come out of his room, and, he was rolling his eyes. I think he sat down for a little bit as we did some more tapping, and he's like, you could just tell, like, this is all crazy.
Not
What
into
are you
it, not
doing?
into it.
No. So, but I saw in JT a bit of myself, having had gone through quite a few traumas when I was 12. And I said to him, out of nowhere, I just said, well, hey, would you like to talk to some of my kids in Rwanda who've been through a big trauma themselves? Because in my mind, why do young people want to speak to adults about something that they think we don't understand, which is true?
I mean, he's walking into a room and we're like, even though, like, you can understand that. Although even though I love tapping for kids, and the tapping solution has created a whole program that wove in the formula for choosing love
Yeah.
for us, because I love tapping for kids. I mean, what's better than being able to move through any kind of pain yourself? I just want to add that, but go ahead.
Well, so he said, sure. And then I said, oh my gosh, how are we going to do this? There's a 10-hour difference, and they don't speak English well enough to communicate. So, long story short, though, and it was over Skype at the time, we set up a call, and JT had not been going to school, and obviously there was just so much going on, and his own anger and helplessness, really.
What do you do? Yeah.
Yeah. And so we set up this Skype call, and I had Chantal and oh my God,
Matthew.
Matt,
Matthew. I'll never.
Matthew,
Yeah.
exactly, who was just such a, both of them I created Project Light for, because they have tremendous stories about how they survived the genocide, which we can bookmark over here. So in any event, we set up this call, and I just remember, and we had a translator, and I was just watching the call. You and I and your mom and maybe a couple of other people were watching them communicate. And I just remember feeling this moment of grace where I realized that the promise of Project Light was happening, that young people who were traumatized were now communicating with each other. And I did not tell Matthew and Chantal what to do or say or anything. And before I knew it, they were leading JT in some tapping.
Well, they were, yes, that's right. I forgot about that. But I remember the call starting off with them saying through the interpreter, "Hey, JT, we heard about what happened to your little brother all the way over here in Rwanda. And we want you to know that you're going to be okay and you're going to feel joy again." And, you know, for me, anyone else other than those two individuals, and you can share their story, anyone else saying that to us had absolutely no credibility. I mean, most people, honestly, that dealt with us as families, I'm talking about our family, but probably this is a shared experience, had fear in their eyes. And that was the problem really with, and I tried, you know, we tried to find therapists, but you could see the fear.
Yes.
And that does not denote confidence.
Right.
And so because they were really out of their element with this, and you knew it.
Mhm.
And but these kids saying to JT, "You're going to be okay and you're going to feel joy again." I'm standing behind him and I'm going, wow, it's possible. It's possible, because, you know, that's coming from them, you know. And I know people sometimes say that they look at me and they say the same thing when they hear my story, but you know, that was really powerful.
Yeah.
That was a powerful healing experience for me, and I know that it was for JT too.
Oh, well, and obviously it was for me, like how blessed and miraculous, or just that we're connected, that now, I mean, you have to know that there is a divine source when you look at these messages as you did, and you have continued, to see that divine connection even through the worst of tragedies. So we left and I came back. I remember I came back for dinner and I said, "Well, where's JT?" And you said, "He's in his room getting ready for school tomorrow and he's writing a speech." I was like, "What?" And he came out of his room and he said, "Can I read this speech to you all?" I mean, we were flabbergasted. And I've never told this story without crying, so we'll see what happens. Uh, he began to read this speech in which he was telling his classmates that it was so important for us to care about other people around the world who had experienced even worse than Newtown had experienced, and that he now wanted to raise money to send our Project Light ambassadors to university. And this wasn't pushing, this was simply allowing a communication with between these beautiful children who are now amazing adults. And so then he went on to create Newtown Loves Rwanda, and you can actually see the story in our documentary, which is on my website. But connecting JT and our Rwandans not only changed JT's life, but changed their lives too. And then you can tell the miracle story of actually meeting them in person, because how does this all happen? But when our lens is open to the miracles and we
Mhm.
follow our hearts, we truly are blessed and supported. And we can have this conversation because that's the life that you're living.
It's true. I mean, hindsight is 2020, but with the benefit of hindsight, you can see how everything was set up to love and support us in the moment. And yeah, incredibly, he created it was Newtown Helps Rwanda .org or .com, and he went to school the next day. He you know, was given the opportunity to attend uh, sporting events at the school and sell these bands that he created that said Newtown Helps Rwanda. I think he sold them for $2 each. And he raised, along with friends that he recruited, I think it was $2,000. And then we came to the apartment that you had rented, the little house there in the center of Newtown, and we Skyped back to those kids, and JT made the announcement. And I remember it was actually Betty that was chosen to receive those funds that she could go to college for. And it was 1 year. And I remember she collapsed. And JT looked at me. There was a whole bunch of us on the couch, which was so incredible. And he looks up at me and he says, is she okay? And I said, you know, the effort on your behalf and your friends that were there with him has fundamentally changed the trajectory of somebody's life across the world. And, you know, I think that they were amazed at that. And he made a commitment on the spot to raise the rest of the money for the other 3 years. And then he went on to fund also Matthew's graduate school. And I think that the most important thing about that was the shift from me, my pain, everything that's going on with me. It's, you know, only me, nobody else understands, to we, and to us, and to helping somebody else. That's, and by the way, you know, all of this, all of our experience, everything that I've learned is woven back into the curriculum in the Choose Love movement. And it's part of the compassion in action, which is having the courage to step outside of whatever's going on with you, to give nurturing, healing love. And of course, we know through the research that all of the nurturing, healing love that we give out comes back to us. And certainly that's what both JT and I have experienced. We were able to step outside of our own grief and mourning and loss and pain to help other people, but that helps and heals ourselves. And can you imagine a world that knows that? It'd be so great, and it will be, because we're creating it alongside you. So that was such an incredible, and by the way, I share that sometimes in my presentations, and everybody is so moved by that. We now have a video that JT made for us that's in the curriculum for middle and high school, because of course we don't mention the tragedy in the elementary school lessons, but we do bring it in middle and high school. Those guys are old enough, they know what's going on. In fact, I mean, if you can do an active shooter drill, in my mind, then you can learn, be aware, and know that it can be, there's a proactive and preventative approach, and be given the skills and tools to manage the pain that can lead to that. But JT has made a video for middle and high school, and he talks about his process, and he talks about that and his experience, and how he uses the formula for moving through. And by the way, the Chantel and Matthew talked about the formula. We can kind of transition into their story if you want to, because it matters. Where they started feeling the gratitude, that forgiveness was a big part of their message to us, and then having that courage to step outside of themselves and use what they've learned, that wisdom from learned experience, to help other people, like they were doing with JT. I mean, if you look at it, it is the formula.
I choose love.
Hey there, listeners. Are you feeling the weight of the world? Well, you're not alone. The U.S. Surgeon General says nearly 50% of parents are overwhelmed by stress. And guess what? It's affecting us all. Just last year, we heard about an epidemic of loneliness hitting half our population, especially young adults. But there's hope. I'm Scarlett Lewis, founder of the Choose Love movement. We're dedicated to your safety, health, and well-being with proactive mental health strategies. Imagine a life where stress and loneliness are replaced by joy and connection. We've already reached millions with essential life skills to prevent violence, substance abuse, and mental illness. Want to join this life-changing movement? It's easy. Visit chooselovemovement.org today. Become a member, spread the word, and access our free resources. Together, we can create a loving, supportive community. Remember, all the nurturing, healing love you give comes back to you tenfold. Thank you for choosing love.
I choose love. I choose love.
Yeah, for sure. And another synchronicity, because this was something that I had adopted in 2000, well, 2003, but I was teaching in my program in Rwanda since 2007, which is, first of all, how to regulate your physiology, because I believe that we are heart-wired for divinity. And heart math is proving this, Greg Braden's work, Joseph Chilton Pierce. And so that when our heart, brain, body are regulated, we're sending what I call the happy hormones into the body to interrupt those stress hormones, which puts us in that fight or flight mode. And so in that place, as you indicated in the beginning, we have access to our higher human gifts, which are intuition, creative problem solving, sense of connectedness, creativity, and a sense of spirituality and transcendence. And so I knew that if these young people in Rwanda could learn this, so we regulated their physiology, taught them how to do that. They taught hundreds of other people. And then the whole grace process formula is about finding out where you are on your spiritual path and how to move to the next level. And the formula for the grace process is we choose what we want to heal, and then we look at all of our judgments and all of our unforgiveness, which is really where the ego lives. And we try to release that and open to forgiveness so that we can live in heart coherence, which is what you're teaching children to do, which is all validated by heart math research. And in those places, you have that instant regulation. And then what we are wanting to achieve and heal in ourselves, in those moments of grace, we really are connected to the divine. And as you said also at the beginning, like you begin to focus on what is a real tragedy. You begin to let go of the minor and not so minor ego defenses, so that you can live in a place where you can literally live from this value system. And what you and I share and the Jesse Lewis Foundation shares is we know that if there's going to be a healing future, if we're going to heal the world, it has to start with this next generation of young people who have grown up with their own tremendous challenges. And as you said, I mean, and there's nowhere I go that people don't talk about the fact that life changed that day. Every parent on the planet was in fear. Children are in fear. There's a number of things that arose specifically from the Sandy Hook tragedy. And unfortunately, we all felt like, okay, this is it now. There's not going to be another tragedy. And then unfortunately, it continues, but we thought, how can this be happening in our world? So if this next generation, like the JTs of the world, and the Matthews and Chantals of the world, can come forward and say that they have forgiven, which is a whole topic. Forgiving doesn't mean there aren't consequences. Forgiveness doesn't mean that we don't have boundaries. But we forgive so that we can be free to live that inspired life with safety and a sense of peace. And so Chantal and Matthew's stories are so horrific, but you know that if they could find this resilience in themselves, that they could be tremendous leaders, which they have turned out to be. Chantal, for those of you listening, this is a difficult story. I'll try to make it not so graphic, but Chantal was hiding from the genocidaires for months. She was injured by machetes, thought fatally injured, and was among a number of dead bodies. And heard, what's that?
How old was she?
8 years old. And heard the murderers coming back and crawled to safety. Her neck had been severely injured, and watched as they came back and finished off the rest of the people. And then she roamed the streets until one of the aid groups came and helped her. I took her to the hospital and took care of her. And had been living a very nomadic life since then, because she had no parents. She literally had to raise herself with no visible means of support until I met her in 2007. And I mean, the resilience that this young woman has is incredible. So we set her up in a business, and she's been very successful. She's had several brain surgeries as a result of the wounds that she carries from the genocide. She successfully has two children and a husband, and continues. And Matthew was 2 years old at the time of the genocide, and he lived in an area that was most highly hit by the war, and he and his family hid in the bushes for 3 months outside in the rain. And I won't go into all the details, but his mother,
Eating grass.
yes, exactly, exactly. And you're 2 years old. I mean, and his mother was killed, and his father was just completely traumatized to the point where he didn't speak anymore. And so the children had to take care of the father. And they had no money to send their children to school, but Matthew was very eager to go to school. And so he would walk 2 hours a day to and from his mountain to this residential orphanage. And he didn't have the school fees to pay because there's no free education in Rwanda, or was not at the time. And when they would kick him out because he didn't have the money, he would hide under the window of the classroom taking notes, and he would never miss a day. Many things intervened, of course, but by the time I met him, he had graduated #1 in his class from high school. I mean, this is, just incredible. And he stands today as a model. And he taught all the people in his community how to tap. They also went back to that high school, and we adopted that high school of 650 young people, whose half of whom's parents were in jail for having murdered their classroom's parents, and of course their classroom, their colleagues were, didn't have parents to take care of them. But our project-led ambassadors went to teach everyone in the school how to tap, how to counsel each other, how to create small families for support. And so they took almost the smallest amount of resources and maximized them and optimized them to everyone that they are in contact with. And as you know, from having been to Rwanda, each year they memorialize the genocide with 3 months of, they don't do this anymore, but of catharsis, where people would tell their stories over and over again, thinking that that was healing. And as you know, if we don't use a somatic tool to regulate our physiology when we're telling our story, we continue to re-traumatize ourselves, and that's where the suffering comes in. But our kids, and they're not kids anymore, they're in their late 20s and early 30s, would go to the memorial events and have little side areas where they would be helping people with tapping to interrupt that flow of the trigger of abreaction and reactions to what they're hearing. And so I have this proud mama feeling, even though I didn't give birth biologically, and you have this, proud mother for JT, who, I mean, the two of you working, I call it in the infinity circuit, to help heal each other, and to protect each other, and to make sure you're both safe. It's so precious. It's such a precious opportunity. And this is not to say, because people who follow you obviously know this, this is not to say that life is perfect. Like, life continues to be incredibly challenging.
You're saying my life's not perfect?
Yeah. Well, I'm just opening to the possibility that,
Yeah.
crap continues to happen, And
I say to people, I'm walking shoulder to shoulder with you on this journey. Life is not a destination until it's over. And so we're all on the journey together.
yes, yes. So you can adopt people kind of, I think you said it right. People are very fearful when they meet someone who's had such a terrible tragedy, because we don't have the skills. We don't know how to be present to the pain without suffering ourselves. And this is the work now that has grown for me through my work in Rwanda and Newtown. And then how could I possibly imagine being invited to Broward County and the Parkland situation, the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School shooting, where I would spend several years there. And then in the Aboriginal communities I worked in Australia. But the one piece that I was yearning for, and this is what you're doing with the foundation, is how do we scale and replicate these measures to get them into the hands of the people who need it most? And for me, the notion of presence, how can I be fully present in my heart, safe in my body and my mind, and connected to the most horrific of human tragedies? How can I see myself in the other? How can I see myself even as the perpetrators who are also victims? And how can we bring this message of this love and presence? Because in presence, what I found when I was in the middle of circumstances that there's no preparation for, there's no rule book, but I had done so much work on my shadow side and my ego side to be present, that I realized that being fully present in my heart gave me access to whatever was needed in the moment. And it wasn't always, there wasn't money for medications for these people. There wasn't food to give them. There was no resources often, but by being fully present to their pain, people felt safe, that they were witnessed, that they were loved, that they were cared for, that there was hope. And so my message now is really, how do we embody that presence? And this is what I teach to not only to mental health professionals, but to parents, to educators, to everyone. If we can imagine everyone who is in charge or serves young people around the world have to be inoculated with this nurturing, healing love, with this compassion, forgiveness, love, so that our young people can grow up to be the leaders we need them to be. So that's the passion for me that has grown out of this work.
Mhm. I think you're right on target. I think that in my research that I do with school shooters, talking with them, conversations that I have with them, that where I ask them what I don't think anybody else is asking: how did we fail you? These are
Yeah.
all children that we're responsible for. Um, and they, boiling everything down to one word, it is feeling seen. They don't feel seen. And that's exactly what you're talking about. And it's kind of interesting. It reminds me of, during one of my conversations with Aaron Stark, and he is a TED Talk person that gave a viral TED Talk with over 15 million viewers, called "I Was Almost a School Shooter." And he now works with law enforcement and talks in conferences across the country. He and I are talking together in a conference in New Hampshire soon for school safety. But he said that, it's going to require that we give love to those we feel deserve it the least. And that's the solution that he gives. And he said that one of his favorite lines is from a movie with Adam Sandler. I think it's The Wedding Singer. And it's just this small little line. I actually took the clip and I put it in my presentations now. And it's a bar scene. And Adam, whoever, and I didn't watch the movie, but whoever he's speaking to said he's having a hard time. And he's like, you know what? Sometimes all we really want is something like to feel held and for somebody to tell us it's okay. And that was really definitely our experience with the school system when JT, tried to go back. And it was kind of interesting because 60 Minutes did an interview with our family in our living room, and they asked JT, did anybody ever ask you if you were okay? I don't know what precipitated that, but you can imagine in the school, or did they ever mention Jesse's name? And he said no. And, he never felt connected there. And when I asked if they ever did ask him if he was okay, and by the way, these were mental health professionals that were embedded in the school, the best of the best, supposedly. And they said, no, absolutely not. It was all fear. We were afraid that if he was having a good day, that he, we didn't want to remind him. You're never going to remind us. If he was having a bad day, we didn't want to make it worse. And, it's like, it was all done with good intention, obviously, but what we learned from that, what I learned, was that it has nothing to do with, skill. And they were also afraid they didn't have the skills and tools that they needed. And we saw that fear, by the way, in almost every therapist that we went to following. And I'm a big believer in therapy. I've been in therapy my whole life. And, but I mean, nobody was adequate to be present with us. And it wasn't about the skills and tools or even experience in this area. It was about having the courage to show up and just be, as you said, present with our pain and see the wounded person and be willing to be present with that. And that takes evidently a tremendous amount of courage. And I will say too, by the way, pre Sandy Hook tragedy and me losing my son, I would react the same way. Oh my gosh, somebody lost their parent. I don't know what to say. I don't, I think maybe I won't go to the funeral because it's uncomfortable and there are going to be so many people and I'm just going to be an extra. And then 3 months goes by and it's like, oh, wait, it's Mother's Day. That's not a right day to send the car, and it has nothing to do with any of that. It's just showing up, and we need to show up for each other, and we need to see each other and have the courage. Obviously we know that behavior is just an expression of what somebody's feeling. And so, we're seeing all these people behaving in crazy ways and understanding that is simply, what they're thinking and feeling, and also a little bit of lack of social and emotional competence, the ability through learned skills and tools. By the way, we're not born with the ability to kind of, access, as you say, through the grace process, our highest and best self instead of reacting out of fear. And that's not to shame anyone who came to the situation with fear. Fear keeps us, alive. Our brains are wired to defend us, and fear simply means that you care. So fear is okay. But if your life is not in danger, you don't want to be living your life reacting out of fear, because that is not the highest and best version of yourself. You want to be present. You want to know how to access that prefrontal cortex, that highest and best version of yourself, for which you have the grace process, we have the choice moment. And it's really important because the outcome of those two different decisions from fear or love look vastly different. And it's got a lot to do with courage.
Yeah. So beautifully said. Rwanda taught me a lot. To go back to my spiritual romantic partner, what did I receive from Rwanda was exactly what I was looking for. Well, not all, but
well, you had a different idea
yeah,
of what that would look like, right?
did have a
But then you accepted what is.
Yes. And what did I do? I had to be very intimate with myself to heal myself enough to go to these places and be fully present, to truly interact one-on-one, to enter into a partnership And everything about it brought me the deep satisfaction and fulfillment of simply connecting with other people to support them in the notion of hope and love. And that's what Rwanda gave me. And when we're in that infinity circuit of giving and receiving, to understand that our presence is enough. If everyone in the world had that gift, and I never saw it more present than when I was working with 100 orphan head of households. These are kids who were 6 to 8 years old at the time of the genocide, and they were given 2 to 6 other children to raise with no visible means of support, no guidance, nothing. We have no idea in this country like about that. But I remember doing a tapping with this group of 100, and I said to them, what are your greatest stressors? And they said, the hopelessness of not having a future, not having parents to guide us, the intrusive memories, hunger, the wound of rape. The list was endless, and it was horrific. And so I remember when we started down the list and we started to tap, I even realized at the end of like 20 minutes, there was a palpable shift in the energy in the room. And we were serving lunch, and we don't do anything without food because these people sometimes don't eat for days at a time. And so I fully expected a stampede out the door when lunch was ready. But they were sitting in this very calm, I would describe it as a sacred space, 100 young people who are now in their late teens, early 20s. And I realized, and from what they said, they were feeling safe in their bodies for the first time. So essentially, and this is what we know with EFT, is that it regulates your physiology. But if you've lived your life with adrenaline and cortisol and steroids pumping through your body, and you don't feel safe in your own body, and you just want to run or avoid or shut down, of course, your actions are not going to be conscious because you don't have that same facility to sit with what it is that you're experiencing in your body. So this giving them the gift of inner safety. Did we heal any of those issues that day? We did not, but we opened the door, just as you're doing. We opened the door that there was a different possibility, and that if we started from a place of inner safety, that hope and the possibility and thinking differently and not and having more conscious behaviors, more loving behaviors, was the answer and the possibility. So I mean, this is the gift that I think we're both trying to bring to the world, is that there is a space, no matter what is going on, where you can feel safe and connected in your body. That's not the full answer. There are still the living of life and the navigating of life. But when we have this foundation, imagine what can happen in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think that you could just give us kind of a overview of what the grace process is that you do?
Sure. The drive-by answer is, well, first, everything is about regulating your physiology and learning to feel safe in your body. And then again, that second stage is kind of looking at, where am I on my spiritual and life journey? So many of us who are traumatized, and all of my work comes out of trying to heal my own childhood traumas, is that there is this, when we're stressed and traumatized, there is this sense of separation, not only from ourselves, but from the divine. And then when that pain of that separation becomes so great, we move into what I call the stirring mode, where we're searching outside of ourselves for the answers. And, we go to all the workshops, we buy all the books, but we're still not feeling comfortable that we have access to our own inner resources. And then so I help people move into that place of surrender, which does not mean giving up, but giving into our divine nature, so that we can move into stillness, so that we can, what I call, pray in the listening mode, meaning let's hear some answers instead of how do we usually pray? We make deals, we make entreaties, but we're not quiet enough to listen for what is that wisdom from our heart telling us. And then synergy is what you're doing, taking that passion, which then shows us the seeds of our destiny from our greatest traumas as we heal those. What emerges is our purpose and our destiny, and then looking to collaborate with people around the world to create that healing in the world. And then finally, the grace process formula, which helps us move from that grief and trauma into the healing that we really desire. And what Rwanda and Newtown and all of the places I've been privileged to work have taught me is that you cannot hold on to your grief and trauma and receive the healing that you desire. The two are not, cannot happen, because if I'm attached to, and this sounds indelicate and I don't mean it to be, but if I'm more focused on the horrific nation, the horrific conditions that I went through, I can't really be holding a heart resonance to receive the healing that I'm desiring. And that's another workshop. But in a sense, so what we have is identifying choice points where you can regulate your physiology and connect with your divine genius, figure out where you are on your path. Do you want to be in separation or do you want to be in stillness? And then this formula for releasing judgments, opening to forgiveness, so that we can truly live in that heart coherence space.
That's beautiful. That's really kind of profound. Would you say that pain and healing come from different parts of our brain? Like I know that I know where the pain is, and I know that you heal that part of your brain, but you have to engage other parts of your brain as well. Would you say that's accurate?
Sure. Well, it's all the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. People are talking about the vagus nerve now. This is something we've known about for a long time. Um, let's just define. So, you know that term, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional.
Yes.
So, and whether it's physical, spiritual, or emotional pain, the suffering comes in when it's about the stories we tell ourselves about the pain
Mm,
that keep us in separation.
mm,
And so I believe that our work eliminates the suffering. You will still have pain, but eliminates the suffering part, which really keeps us stuck. So we have the amygdala and the hippocampus in the brain, which we know from using tapping and the nurturing, healing, love formula, and heart math has shown us that literally what we need to do is repair that dysfunction in the brain, because trauma is a brain dysfunction, which is highly, people are not taught about that. And so we think that cognitive behavioral therapy can fix it, or we think that, just talking someone out of their pain. No, you cannot talk someone out of their pain. So when we regulate the physiology, then we interrupt that flow of those stress hormones. We bring in the endorphins, which really is the medicine, endorphins, because that gives us a sense of inner peace and safety.
it's your body's natural painkiller.
Exactly, exactly. So whether pain is in a different place, is taken care of in a different place in the brain or not, I can't tell you as an expert in that, but I can tell you that with the flow of endorphins, with our memory centers and our safety centers now regulated, that's where the healing drops in. That's where the ahas come in. That's where the change of the story comes in,
Mhm.
which you have done and JT has done so beautifully, is taken this tragedy and giving it meaning and purpose. And
Yeah, for
that's
sure.
the healing. And then the ahas, the many ahas you've had because you were open to the signs that allow us to realize that The tragedy was a pinpoint moment in time, but we can keep truly alive, not just in our memories, but in our beings, the memories of our lost loved ones, in the openness of I can communicate now in my heart and my brain and my body. And the form has just changed. Now, this doesn't take away any pain of physically losing your child, but that there are more, and that the divine wants to support us, but we have to have our eyes open to what those miracles and signs are.
Yeah, I think that's very important. The distinction between pain and suffering, they are not the same thing. You will feel pain, but the length of suffering that you have is within your power. But you do need to have that awareness as well as some skills and tools. That's what Choose Love teaches. That's what the grace process brings you through. I've been through the grace process. So I know how powerful it is in the very beginning. And I also think it's really important that you do what is the story that you're telling yourself? What do you think about every day? What do you pay attention to? Because attention is the purest form of love. That attention is going to be your reality. And thinking about what you think about, which is what I said at Jesse's funeral to the congregation, and choosing a loving thought over an angry thought. It really is as simple as that. But of course, simple isn't always easy. And we were so blessed to have, you, boots on ground, and Nick and his entire family as guides, really. And of course, we have a very strong faith, and that helped as well because we knew where Jesse was. And then just, being a part of this community and having so many people come in with love and being held up in a world of love. I mean, we received so much love, and I was so present for that love. So anybody that's listening, thank you, because it helped, and we felt it, and it was healing. I kept everything. It's still in my basement. I feel like it's holding this house up in love. But I want to thank you so much. I mean, we never did touch on our trip to Uganda to meet everyone, and and what all our adventures subsequently. We're going to have another podcast to talk about that. But it's long overdue that we had this conversation on the Choose Love podcast. I want to thank you so much for joining us, and just sharing your heart, sharing your really substantial wisdom with all of your experience working in all of these places. I mean, it takes a special person that wants to go to a traumatized community, and that trauma lasts. I mean, our resiliency center just shut down, and that was because of finances. Otherwise it would have stayed open because there are more and more people that need it. And that's 10 years later. So, just thankful for you and what you do in the world, and, for having the courage to show up in these situations and with people that, really need to be seen and need to have their grief seen, and giving them a process and a guide through it. You're a blessing.
Thank you
so much.
Well, it's my honor, and I receive hopefully just as much as I offer. So I'm blessed to follow my heart, and I'm blessed to have known you and our adventures together that have forever changed me in a beautiful way. So thank you.
Absolutely. And I want you to know I've been drinking. For those of you that believe in this, that you can label water, and it's actually true. It's not woo-woo or anything. Like water is very responsive to the vessels that it's in and the messaging that's on it. And some people even think that it's interactive. But anyway, I'm going to send you one of these cups. This has the
it's beautiful.
And have a lot of fun. I always I just fill this up in the morning with water, and I always have the water just sitting on my desk. So I'm sipping water that's being marinated in nurturing, healing love, and have a lot of fun, which is so awesome.
I love that.
We'll send you one of those out of gratitude for sharing with us today. And just, love you so much. And let's definitely have a part 2.
I would love that.
All right.
Ellen, be well.
Yeah, you be well. And everybody that's listening, be well, and tune in again. After hearing this conversation, share this. This is how the word gets out. This is how you spread nurturing, healing love. Share it with a friend that you think could use it. Share it with your mom or your dad or your family, friends. Share it on Facebook, on social media. Share it so we can get the word out about our very important work and messages. And we really appreciate you for doing that. That's how the word gets out about the Choose Love movement and the grace process. So thanks, everybody. And thank you, Dr. Lori Leyden. And until next time.
Hey, hey, oh. It's all part of us. We can all choose love. It'll lift you up.